process of healing. Mr.
Yeah, yeah.
Siamon Emery, how are you today?
Thank you, sir. I'm amazing. Thank you so much. Things are doing really well today. Living in sunny Costa Rica, sometimes it's difficult to be not well. So it's
Yeah,
always pretty good to be here.
yeah, I was gonna ask where you're from. I can see the sun shining through, it looks like.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm in the Guanacaste area of in the northwest of Costa Rica in a town called Masara.
Nice.
Yes. It's a beautiful place. Absolutely. Very lucky to be here.
Yeah, yeah, it seems gorgeous. I live in
Mm.
the South in Tennessee, and
Oh, beautiful.
it's very pretty today. Looking outside, the sun is shining, but it's 20 degrees. So
It's a look but don't touch kind of day.
yeah, absolutely. But it's been a good day. I've been sitting in here, connecting with people, recording, doing some editing,
Mm.
and it just fills my heart.
Agreed.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation, like reading about you, watching some of your videos, but why don't you do a little bit of an introduction?
My name's Simon Emery. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm actually what we would call a mental strength coach, but I actually would diversify from that space too. And I actually just help people to understand that life is a human experience and we don't always have to pathologize or put labels on things to believe in a space that we are unhealed or unworthy or unprocessed. And so I just lead people back to a sense of wholeness and fullness through some scientific processes and also some spiritual and lived experiences from the same. So that's a very short sort of introduction to who I am, but that's basically what I do.
Yeah, that's nice. I
Mm.
appreciate that. So the name of my show is The Process of Healing. And to give you a little bit of
Mm.
story on it is I'm a gay man in the South.
Mm.
Big
Mhm.
brutal hate crime about 10 years
Mm.
ago. It was an attempted murder situation with rape. And I got very active in mental. And I started going to therapy and we started a sexual assault group therapy for men. And I was finding how men, especially, are supposed to toughen up, push everything down, not acknowledge it. And being in with these guys, they would talk about how they didn't have trauma in some cases, or at least until their sexual assault happened.
Mm.
Then they would say, but yeah, my mom was bipolar and my dad didn't come to the soccer games and was missing. And I'm like, that is trauma. And so I'm finding that especially men are having a hard time recognizing trauma and actually processing it. So with that bit of history of why I started the podcast and doing what I'm doing, I would love to ask you, like, what is your relationship with trauma?
My relationship at the moment and with the work that I've been doing, and I'll just start with you first before we go back into the past, is I'm really understanding there's a lot of different definitions to trauma out there. And I'm really trying to help people to understand that actually trauma is the human experience. A lot of us suffer it. A lot of us understand it. It's not a condition or an experience that's finite. It actually happens quite often. And so if we can look at it as something like that, then we can actually accept it more as a life experience and not something that's to be avoided or to be suppressed or to be not connected to. That understanding. So just sitting into, I was born into a home of two intravenous drug users, opium, heroin. By the time I was probably 8 months old, my mother was using. My mother wasn't using when I was born, but not long after I was born, she was using. And so between my mother and my father, we spent the next probably 5 years just traveling to different, very unsafe houses and squats, and basically just going from find a drug, use the drug, find the drug, use the drug, find the money for the drug. And so that looked like stealing and completely, and my needs as a little boy not being met whatsoever. But at the age of 5, my mother decided she needed to, and I totally understand it as an adult man now. My mother realized that what she was doing was one of us was going to get killed. So she had to pull herself out. So she decided to leave and go to India to dry out. And she left me in the care of my father and my father's parents, which then became just as bad because my father's parents refused to admit that he had a problem and would usually put me with him as a 5 and 6 and 7-year-old boy when he would leave the house to go out. And we always knew he was going out to get his fit for the day. And so there would just be this little 7-year-old boy tagging along behind a junkie in the street while he did the things that he needed to do to be the person he was. And so that looked like that really till about 10, and no real safety, no real consistency, no, my emotions and my safety, and, my ability to be valid in that space was always second. I was used more as a pawn than anything else. I was used as a way to try and manipulate different people as a little boy. And my mother returned at around the age of 10 and I moved back in with her. And it was still chaos. And it was chaos all the way up until my actually early 20s when I decided that it was probably time that I got a job. I tried to get in the past of being a professional surfer because surfing I found was one thing that was always a constant in my life. Fortunately, I didn't have the skill set at that time to do that. And then finally realized at 19, 20 that I had to get a job. And then from that point on, I was pretty much on my own. And from that point. So as you can see, a very unstable, very inconsistent, very non-validating, non-caring environment. I was mostly used as a pawn or a way for, I was the 5-year-old boy who was taking care of his parents, the 12-year-old boy who was taking care of his mother and trying to be always there for everybody and be the stoic man from a very young age, the one whose emotions didn't affect him and it was all right, it doesn't matter. And then obviously we know, as we said before, we as men, we're like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. No, I tell you, that happened to me as a child, but it's not me now. So suppress, yeah. And then those behaviors start to come out, like the behaviors of maybe you're being promiscuous in your relationships. Maybe you're drinking a little bit too much. Maybe there's other things going on. I must say that I never took drugs to the extent I did some little bits of dabbling here and there, but it was nothing that I was interested in. I knew that just by experiencing it firsthand, I was like, no, that's not the road I'll take. But I did love to drink. And so drinking and women were my vice for the most part from my early 20s all the way through my 20s.
Yeah.
That leads into the realization I'd been engaged to a woman and that relationship ended and that deeply affected me in a way that wasn't relevant for the situation. And that's when I started to put some pieces of the puzzle together going, okay, so I have a deep grief going on here with a woman who I knew was meant to end anyway. And it was just this sobbing grief that I couldn't shift. I couldn't move. And then that's when I started to really start to investigate on my own space. And that's when therapy started, basically 30, 31. When really the first point of walking into a therapist's place and going, maybe there's something going on here. Maybe there's more to my life I'm willing to admit to in this moment. Because as a man, if we admit to failings or to being less than this man, then we obviously put to the world, we're a weak man, we're a man who's broken, we're a man, and nobody man wants to, like you say, no man wants to be seen as broken or a problem, someone else's problem. We want to suppress it. No, there's nothing wrong with it. So that's where it first started. So that's pretty much where it starts there.
Yeah. When 30s are still young. I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
I remember when I was younger thinking 30 was old and then you hit 30 and 40 and it's like, oh, that's really not. But
Yeah.
to have the realizations that you had, I know that personally myself, my big T, my trauma happened at 30
Mm,
years old. So I
mm,
was grown. I always said that I didn't know hate existed. I'd seen it on television,
mm,
but my family was loving and accepting. Me being gay or different wasn't a thing,
mm,
wasn't known as being different. And so it really shook me to my core. And I developed new fears, trauma responses. And I always like to try to follow the breadcrumbs back to see where it
mm,
came. Because there were things that happened in my childhood that through therapy and with my big T in my adult life actually got me to the core of some of my problems when it comes to abandonment issues and things like that. And my question to you is, I was reading on your website, you were talking about fears, and the
mm,
word fear just really stood out to me. I believe the part that I was reading was more of a business sense, but the word just stood out to me because I know my fears I developed, and it took me a little while to really figure out why and how to handle it. And I would like to
mm.
ask you, when you started following the breadcrumbs back through therapy, did you start realizing things that maybe you were scared of or things that you stayed away from because of the trauma?
Yes, obviously, because you have such a deep imprint of some of those experiences on your body. Yeah. And if you've been given for me, I wasn't given a loving childhood. I was given, for the most part, it was very loving, but it wasn't consistent. And so there wasn't any consistency of love there. And there was a lot of abandonment. There was a lot of things. So I actually wasn't given or held in a way that helped me to bring those fears back and to process those fears. It was always those fears were, oh, that's a fear. Let's just avoid it because I don't have the actual processing capability or even the understanding of actually how to even think with that. Like, how do I even look at that? That's just something I'm going to push away and leave over here. I'm like, no, we're not going there. And then realizing now, as the mentor and coach and therapist that I am, that actually the fear is where we need to go.
Yeah.
But the fear is where we need to sit. Like the fear of For yourself, I can imagine reliving that traumatic experience that you had, acutely, that massive acute traumatic experience that you had, like having to go back into those spaces and relive that part and be around those areas again. Obviously, massively triggering. And I witnessed it in myself because I'm the kind of man who likes really, now that I have a process, I like to really lean into it myself. If I'm just, I say, if I'm going to teach my amazing clients how to do this, I'm going to really do it myself too, so I can put myself in really dysregulating places. And so the fear is, it's the old adage of the wound is where the light gets in. And I think, as I explained to you before about the human condition, it's like sometimes we like to pathologize some of our experiences and say, I had this experience. That means I have this and this disorder. And so then we identify into that disorder space and go, okay, cool. Then that gives me a diagnosis. That gives me a process. Then I can work towards do it through classic psychology sense. And I had exactly the same thing. And my diagnosis really allowed me to be a little bit of a bastard. So, hey, I had a really crappy childhood. What do I get? I'd like to get some government assistance. I'd love to get the woe is me. I was a bit more of the victim. And then that really helped me to stay in that space, to avoid the fear and avoid the concept of fear. I'm like, no, fear's okay. It's there. But yeah, because for me, fear is really where we want to sit a lot of the time, but only once we've built a capacity and an understanding of how to do it appropriately. We don't just jump headlong into the fear. We actually create a space in our own experience first that we should have been taught from our childhood, or that maybe we were, or maybe we'd forgotten, or maybe we just don't know how to do it because of how society works today. Is their ability that actually our world always does take care of us, even if we can't see it in the moment, even if we don't understand why it's happening to us in this space. If we actually zoom out of the picture and look at it from a long-term overview and we look back at all of our life, I wouldn't take back one experience that I've ever had in my life, David. It's brought me to the man I am today. Like all of those childhood experiences, all of those failed relationships, all of those different experiences that I had throughout my adulthood, like I'm really, really content as a man I am today. So that's what I'm saying. As we feel it in the moment, we may see it from a point of view that says, okay, this is not what I want. This is not an outcome that I'm looking for. But how do we know? Because are we looking at it through the lens of that fear? Or is it that the fear is showing up again in us to so we can sit with it and understand it and process it and see that actually where the gold, that's where the light, when the love shines in, and that's where we can really focus in on who we are.
There was an experience where I was a guest on someone's podcast and they do rapid fire questions. And the very last one was, would you change what happened to you? And I immediately said no. And you can even see in camera in real time, I was like, what the hell just happened? Because I never thought that I never imagined that. And so that was something I had to go sit with. And I've learned to sit with these things. And and it was like, this has put me on a completely different path. I was going into the direction that was just going to help the rich man get richer. And I was going to work 40 hours plus a week just to come home, be miserable. And now it's connected me with some amazing people, with something I'm completely passionate about. And I'm building my own empire. And that would not have happened had my trauma happened. Now, I would not pick it, but I'm now driving hard. And so I've learned, I like what you said about like facing the fears. But you had said we have to know how to, I'm not sure the verbiage that you use, but we have to know how to handle them healthy in order to actually sit with them. And I call it my toolkit, right? Like I've put things in my toolkit that I've learned along the way to where now I look at the fear, when I fear something, I look at it as a challenge and I'm going to conquer it. But it's something that I've learned to enjoy, and it's my way of keeping or regaining control. Because I think in victims period, I think that what we all say that we didn't have that we wanted was control. And so that has just been the way that I challenge those fears and overcome them. And another thing that I want to point on, you said a lot of things that just really sparked some things in me. So you had talked about you could have stayed into a victim mindset and got government assistance. And I found for a while, within probably the first year, because I was also going to court and everything and having to face this guy. When the court and trial and everything was over, people were running up to me and they're like, it's over now. It's done. And I'm like, no, it's not. There's a whole other pile of crap. I'm now.
That's only just begun. Okay, we were closure in this aspect. Now we're going to look at this whole other thing over here that I've suppressed until we get this done. Yeah.
And I found that I became very comfortable in that victim mentality because when the court and everything was
Mm,
happening, the dust hadn't settled for anybody. So I was being nurtured. I was being cared for. I was being
held.
heard and called and all these things. When the judge hit the gavel and they said, here's the sentencing and it's over, the dust settled for everybody. And I was just starting a
Mm,
whole different type of healing. And so I found myself wanting to stay in a victim mindset because I was needing and wanting that attention. And I learned to almost weaponize it in some cases for it to benefit me.
Of course, because if you can imagine all of those needs that you wanted in that moment, all of those experiences that you want in that really scared place, all of a sudden are present with you. And so then that's the key right there to healing. That's the key to wholeness. It's right. So how did those experiences make me feel? Okay, so they make me feel because what we are after at the end of the day is that if we look at it from a polyvagal, from a sense of safety space, like what we're after is people that see us, validate us, and help us to co-regulate our nervous system. And so when we get that external to us, we're like, oh my God, this is healing. This is wholeness. And so then all of a sudden, when it's taken away from us, because that's people's understanding, it's, oh, okay, you're complete now. Your story is told. You're done. Same with me. Oh, you're an adult now. Your story's told. Good luck. I'm like, hang on a second. But I really like that. Where are you going? Oh, it's like, yeah. And so I totally get it's totally unreasonable. And then that's the thing when you're then on your own, when everything's been done, when everything, like you said, when the gavel's thrown down and everybody's going, it's done. Good luck now. On with your life. When I feel so unsafe, when I feel so not connected to my body, when I'm on hypervigilance all the time because I don't know if this life happened again because I have no idea why it happened to me in the first place. And so then how do I then understand, how do I get another greater feeling of feeling safe in my environment and my community again? I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. I mean,
totally get it.
yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head. I don't have children. Odds are I'm not going to have children at this age in life, I do believe in that generational abuse and trauma being passed down. And I wanted to make sure that it stopped here.
Mm,
I learned the hard way that even when I got into a
mm,
romantic relationship, there were things that I hadn't even known to process until I
mm,
was in that relationship. And that caused me to do some things completely out of character that caused
mm.
relationship to come to an end.
It's the other thing too. It's exactly the same thing, right? It's like into the fear. If we have a fear, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Simple as that. Okay. And then that's why I talk to people about exposing themselves into, same for me, into a new relationship. I'm like, oh, wow, I thought I sat with all these things. Here I am, Mr. Guru, who knows how to regulate and see. It's just, oh no, I'm a 14-year-old boy at the moment in this adult relationship. Where did this guy come from? And so exactly, and this is so true. And we can't ever judge ourselves for the things that we don't know. And even though we wanted to be in that relationship, and even though sometimes those connections we really wanted, they failed for a reason or they ended for a reason because we really, life says we're going to experience it. Yeah. And so if we shut ourselves off from these experiences and we just don't live, we don't date, we go to bars again or go to do the things that we love to do, then we just become something that's, what kind of life is that? We become something that's just a recluse and somebody who just sits in their house and watches TV and eats TV dinners and takeout. And what kind of life is that? So that's the understanding sometimes as much as it sucks, and as much as sometimes and as much as it's a place you'd rather not be, it's still better than the alternative.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did is after this long relationship ended and I was back on my own, I really sat with it and was like, there are things that I unfortunately had to learn the hard way because I didn't know what I didn't know until it happened. And one of the greatest gifts my partner gave me was helping me realize these things that I now need to
Mm,
work on to better myself and to be a better
mm,
partner, to be a better friend.
mm, mm,
I'll try to look at it as a gift. I hate toxic positivity, but I don't think that's one of them. I'm taking the
mm.
positive away because what we had was beautiful and amazing. It came to an end, but maybe it's because our jobs were done. But now I'm set on a new path and I have new things to learn that's just going to make me bigger and better.
You don't know. And again, to the same degree, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what's leading for us in the future either. So suddenly coming together and we can hold on to it from an old paradigm of, I don't know if this is ever going to come again because this is what's helped me to feel loved and seen and safe. And I don't know if so. I don't want to let that go. And it's really scary. But how do we not know that something is just around the corner that we'd already understood what could potentially be coming, or another experience? And then when that experience arrives, you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad that relationship or that job or that experience, or I had to move out of that house, or I had to do, you name it, anything that's going to be a bit dysregulating or something you would prefer not happen. And then we look back and again, it's blowing up that picture. You go, wow, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be living the life I am right now. So it all comes back to these points. But even though in the moment, we want to use it as a way to hold on to a point of ourselves, because obviously, these things that are in our lives that create, again, I'm going to use the word safety, and create connection and create love and create safety, but create those experiences in our life. If we really want to be able to experience life as a wholeness, we need to be able to let those go and allow the new to come in. But if we've never had an experience of all of the shit, or having life here around being on your own, then we'll just grab on to the next thing that comes like a raft, and not actually allow our whole experience to come along. And, that is a trauma response. It's okay, I can't sit with this as who I am now without this person, house, job, whatever. So I need to replace that as soon as I bloody well can. And I'm going to do it with the first person, the first job, the first house that walks through the door. Yeah. And then that's the life you create for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So on that note, you were 30, 31 when you actually started therapy with this.
Yeah.
When you're 30, 31 years old, you're really getting in a taste of adult life and relationships and
Yes.
like I know that I battled with the stigmas that come around with mental health
Mm,
and being a victim or being a
mm,
survivor. And I struggle horror still sometimes to this day. I struggle with the stigmas and I want to be a part of breaking those stigmas. Do you have that kind of battle with yourself? Did you want to go to therapy? Did you like it when you first started, or was it almost a chore at first for you?
I think at first I did it to be honest with you, I did it at the behest of my ex fiance at the time. She's like, you need to go to therapy. And I did it as a way to appease her.
Yeah.
And he went, oh, maybe if I do this, we might be able to get back together and something like that. And then I went, not, I wouldn't say begrudgingly, but I certainly went not on my own full volition. And then I went there, and then obviously telling my story, and then watching the psychotherapist's eyes widen and widen. I'm like, oh, maybe I do have something going.
Yeah.
And then the stigma, you're right. Then the stigma comes on, and you tell a few more people, because I never told those stories to many people at all. It's just an experience for my childhood. And I'm sure some point of view would be the same too. So I don't know how much of this story I want to share. And so then the more I would share it, the more I got to. And what was really validating in the initial was like, oh, actually, you know what? That experience is something that can create this version of a person who's sitting here now. Oh, okay. Oh, all right, cool. I'm not just losing my mind and not being able to sit still and not feeling safe in any connection, not any of these things. Oh, okay. So this is actually potentially something to do with an experience that I've had. Cool. Okay. Now what? Oh, just keep coming back and talking about your experience as a child now, and we'll process them all from 0 all the way to 17 when I moved out
Yeah.
to live in my car.
Did it was it a surprise to you that you had been through traumatic events? Would you have ever classified yourself in a abusive or traumatic home?
No, it's crazy. No, it was just home.
Yeah.
It wasn't consistent. It was just home. I was healthy. I was living a life that I thought was fine with me. It was like things were going well. My mother had remarried and had sisters by that stage. So I had beautiful little twin sisters that I used to hang out with. My mum, and my father was doing his own thing, living on his own and still using, but not using in a sense. He was still being medicated from the government for his addiction. So everything was, for the want of a better word, normal. And for me, then I'm like, well, my grandparents were great, and I had a big extended family that I loved as well. But those acute events never really seeped in. They were just on that, like I said, they were just, as men, we just suppress them. I was like, "Oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that time where you had to pull your father out of the train station toilet with a needle in his arm to push him on the train to get him home when you were 7. Don't worry about that. That's just something that happened. Yeah. That's just life."
Wow.
Mm.
What was that feeling like when the therapist was like telling you that these are traumatic events that need to be
Mm.
talked about? Did you almost want to argue
Yeah.
with her and think, no,
I didn't, yeah, the first response to that was like, no, I'm all right. No, it's fine. I was working in construction at the time. I had an apprenticeship as a carpenter. So I was working with a bunch of men, which was really cool. Toxic men, obviously, but I didn't know any better as a young man. I was surfing a lot. I had a couple of girlfriends hanging around. I had a nice truck. Things in my life, things are like, don't tell me my life's not going good, because actually, for the first time in my life, it bloody well is. But don't give me a different version of that, because I've got it. I've had to manage it just to get it to here. And as soon as you try and tell me that, okay, there might be a problem, I don't want to hear it. I'm going to go and have a beer. Get them away from me.
Yeah.
You know, that's how it was. And so then I obviously got that first inclination, and then I didn't go back again for a couple of years. I'm like, fuck off. Started a business, started this other things happening, a whole life happening. And whilst behind the chaos was starting to really get some momentum, that I was trying to distance myself off from and not acknowledge this, and just said, oh, look, yeah, that's there. But look at the shiny, bright things over here that I can look at. You know?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
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 And it goes back to that fear thing, right? You don't
Mm.
want to acknowledge this monster under your bed if you don't have to. If that monster
No.
sleep, let it sleep. But so was there a I'm gonna ask a question that I hate when the
Sure.
even gets asked to me. But I'm gonna ask it anyways. But was there like a aha moment for you that you remember where you're like, oh shit?
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't until 10 years later. It wasn't until I was 40 or early 40s. Yeah. I'd managed to keep it rolling. Obviously, in between those places, I'd gone to India and studied, because I knew I'd studied yoga and done a diploma of yogic studies, a whole bunch of other study and understanding around trauma and trauma experiences. And here I was just dancing around the subject while still doing all of the. So I was appeasing a part of me that was saying, okay, I've got a handle on this, is fine. Oh, I'm going to make this business as well. And I'm in a loving relationship with a woman from the South as well. She was from South Carolina, who I thought I was going to marry. We were living in Australia at the time. And then obviously, because of all the suppression of my own experience that I'd been able to do, as I got into that relationship and started to get more connected, and we bought some property, we were about to build a house. She was working full time. I was working flat out. All of a sudden, all these unprocessed emotions that I really hadn't sat with were all of a sudden just dropped into my lap.
So
And
you
I
were
went,
actually
yeah.
already in the mental health field before
Mm.
actually like processed and wow.
So I was already starting to treat and see people in a very relaxed space. Like I was just talking to people because people could see how I talk and how I articulated my experience. People really resonated with that and my understanding of where we sat with it. And so then I just started having these loose conversations with the people. Then I started to formalize it a bit more. And then I started to become a bit more of a coach. And whilst the whole time, this big chunk of my own stuff was just sitting there going, are you going to look at this now? And so I was being the wounded healer. I was going, no, I can heal. I don't need to look at this because I can heal you. I'm going to use this to heal you. The Chiron, the wounded healers in the Greek mythology. So I was doing a lot of that. And then what happened was the relationship ended. We got right to the point where we were basically 2 weeks away from building our first home. And then she just come down one day and said, I don't want to be in this anymore and I'm going to leave. I'm like, what? And then everything I'd been suppressing and holding on to just completely just fell out for everybody to see. And I was gone. I was a mess. Gone. 2 years.
Did you have to step away from business and coaching and all that and just really
Everything. I had to stop my business. I had to stop all of the coaching and mentoring. And then in the therapy spaces, I literally drunk for the first year. I took a role just as an employee and just stopped everything, sold what I had to sell, and just was right in the pit, in the belly of the beast of everything that I suppressed for so long. And whilst in the moment, it was quite hard, amazingly hard. But again, it was required. And I'd been avoiding it for so long. But I knew that this was the time now. It's okay, early 40s, this is the time where I get to look at everything that I need to look at. It's where I get to feel everything that I avoided feeling, looking at. I didn't need to look at it anymore because I knew exactly in cognitive space what it looked like. I just suppressed, I just stopped myself from feeling. And that's what alcohols and barbiturates will do. It's okay, I'm just going to stop myself from feeling. And because I didn't have the capacity or the understanding about how to really sit in that sadness, really allow the sadness to be, really validate the sadness. You know, what it took me back to was that little boy, his mum had got on that flight and booked off to India as a 5-year-old boy. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're leaving me in the care of this man and his parents? What? I'm going to die. Why are you doing that? And that's out of 40-year-old man, 40 odd, young 40, he used to have this 5-year-old boy who's right there again, who's just suppressed, who's scared as hell, and who doesn't know what to do. And that's who I was, this boy with men's clothing on. And that was hard.
I've been through that in a smaller form because again, my trauma happened in my adult life, but I even
Mm,
find, I probably won't use the words beautifully. The whole study that's been out there of how traumatized people will go back to the age that the
mm,
trauma happened. That's where their inner child is stuck.
mm,
And even what with the way that maybe we have trauma responses could be from the age range of when you had your
mm,
T
mm,
happened at 34. And so I'm bound with this whole, do I still have an inner child? And what
mm.
does it mean? Because it's one of those clinical words that I think is silly at that time.
Yes.
But I found myself even having arguments with my partner or trauma
Mm,
is going back to that 30. And you think 34 is older and mature, but there's still
mm,
that
mm,
evenness to it and a lot of learning. I find myself
mhm.
back to that age range and mindset.
Well, if I ask you this question, David, who was really scared when that happened? I know the adult you was, but who was really scared? That little boy, the little boy in you who went, "What the fuck happened? What just happened in my life? I thought my world was safe. My world isn't safe anymore." So there's this still version, as much as we like to think that we're grown adults at whatever age, there is still absolutely versions of me that are alive in my body. And those responses, emotional responses to different situations are still, like you said, still stuck emotions from our childhood that we never went through, that we never sat with, and that we didn't have the capacity to sit with. And some of the work that I do is through what I call somatic regression. Yeah. So it's like the way that I work now is it's like, okay, great. You had that trauma experience. That's great. That's cool. We can talk about that if you want to. That's okay. Absolutely. All versions of you are welcome here. What I'd really like to know though was like, when was the first time that you're feeling safe? Do you have a memory like that? And then through the process that I use is through the meditative process that I've instigated as well. So it's a process of actually calming, and this is the scientific approach. So actually calming the limbic system, calming the amygdala, calming the adrenals, stopping pumping noradrenaline through our body just for a very short period of time to feel safe in that moment. Yeah. And we stop the hormones of stress just pumping through our body. And then I just prompt some really simple questions. And so what happens when we come out of those trauma responses, those old limbic system sort of responses in our body, which is the fight or flight, yeah, which is the autonomic nervous system. And so you got to remember that nervous system has been with us for millennia, like since the dawn of the very first crustacean, if you believe in whatever theory you want to believe in. But I'm just saying with us, it's been with us for the very beginning of man, time of man. And so if we're going to look at, okay, I know that the emotional response that I'm having right now isn't correct for the situation, but there's nothing I can do to stop myself from acting out that way because actually it becomes a survival drive. It becomes a point that it's below cognition. You have no ability to actually stop yourself. It's like why drug users will still go back to the same place. And so getting back to what I was saying, once we calm out of that limbic system, we then gain access to our prefrontal cortex, our frontal cortex, frontal lobes, which is the seat of rational thought. We upregulate that space and we also upregulate the hippocampus. The hippocampus is actually where the seat of long-term memories that we access as well. Once we get access to our hippocampal regions and our rational brain, out of that fear response, out of that autonomic nervous system response, out of that unsafe response, we automatically get flash of memories from our childhood when we were having fun, when we were loved, because we all were in some way, shape, or form. Might have been just from a school teacher. And then all of a sudden, in that moment, you get to feel it. And then I start to talk to you through this process. Can we build that process out? What day was it? What kind of weather? Was it 20 degrees outside? But don't touch day. Was it one of those? We really start to build out a picture of that space. And then once we build that picture out, and once you've identified all the processes in there, I just ask you where do you feel that? And when you feel that safety, where do you feel that in the body? And then that becomes our anchor of a feeling that we then use as a way to continually bring us out of that limbic system response and back into our body. And then that creates capacity, David, in us to actually then start to feel some of those emotions that we've suppressed because we now have a capacity of safety that we've given to ourselves that says, okay, I can feel some of that sadness or that fear or that loneliness now because I actually have a resource of safety in my body that I can come back to.
When you help people get to this point and they
Mm,
awaken these things inside them, it's didn't want. Like, what happens? Is that where, like, reparenting starts? Do you like the term reparenting?
It's two-pronged, right? So we can look at it through two different lenses. So I look at it through a spiritual process and through a scientific approach as well. Obviously, they're studying neuroscience that I do. So we look at it from the neuroscience point of view, first of all. Right, through a process called Hebb's postulates, that neurons that fire together wire together. So if the neurons that are in our brain, in our pathways, in our brains and synapses, if we've constantly been in a fight or flight space all the time, we've constantly been pumping our adrenals, we've constantly been pumping cortisol, then we're going to have synapses in the brain that are wired for unsafe. So they're going to be wired for that actual noradrenaline. They're going to be wired for that cortisol. There are going to be more of those synapses in the brain that will require more of those hormones. And so it's almost like a feedback loop system. So this is the thing, is when we get so conditioned to fear in our limbic system, we actually start to create fear-induced responses like our brain. Some of us say our brain will be our enemy. It's because that cortisol response, that noradrenaline, that adrenaline response, the brain is looking for it because it's actually wired for that place. And so then if I create a place of safety and start to create a sense of safety and a feeling, we start to feel safe in our body for the first time. What do we start to do? We start to downregulate that synapse response. We start to downregulate those noradrenaline and adrenals pumping. We start to actually come out of that space. And then we actually start to upregulate serotonin, oxytocin, all of the feelings of connection and safety, all of those hormones. And so we start to rebalance our brain, our nervous system. And it really just comes through feeling. We don't give ourselves the permission to feel safe. So that's a scientific point of view. If we're going to look at it from a spiritual sort of reparenting space, David, you become the mother and the father to those versions of yourself that feel unsafe and unseen. And in the moment that those feelings start to come up again, you look at yourself as a little boy and you say, hey, buddy, I hear you. Do you need me for a moment? Do you need me to sit with you and hold you in safety? Yes, I do, please. Okay. And you prioritize yourself. For the first few months, 3 months, you'll prioritize your feelings are the most important thing in that moment. And so then what happens as you start to allow that unsafe feeling, that inner part of you, or maybe that 34-year-old man or that boy who was really traumatized by that experience who's still alive in you, you start to allow him to feel unsafe, start to allow that experience of unsafety or fear to be there and don't suppress it. What do children do? Let's look at it from this point of view. What happens when a child scrapes his knee or gets scared by a dog or something like that? What do? They'll run to their primary caregiver. What will the primary caregiver do? They'll pick that child up and they will hold it till safety. They'll co-regulate through the safety of their nervous system. So they'll co-regulate through holding that child, or grasping that child, or seeing that child and validating that child's experience. That child would look at that parent and go, I'm safe. That helps me to feel safe. And so then we replicate that ourselves. We become that version of ourselves. So we think of ourselves every time we start to feel fear or feel not safe for whatever reason, we then create space in ourselves to actually start to feel that place and go, that feeling is wanted. That feeling is relevant. That feeling is valid. I now I'm the parent, mother and father to that feeling that gets to validate that feeling by allowing it to be there.
This past, I guess, 2024 is when I
Mm,
really started doing some work and researching and learning about the inner child. And
mm,
I think that I went through this phase of when I really didn't understand the inner child, of thinking that just meant when you're going to go have fun and be silly.
yeah,
I think that's a big part of it. I think that is,
absolutely.
I want to get
Mm,
down and finger paint with my nephews and let my inner child be silly
yeah.
with them. But I did not realize the things inside. I have abandonment issues. My parents, they had me at 14 years old. My mother,
Mm,
she's an amazing mother now, but it took her some time. But she left me on a doorstep. That's where those abandonment
mm,
issues come from.
mm,
So I always go back to the doorstep I was left on.
mm,
And I've not, I would have a hard time finding safety and security from this.
mm,
I didn't realize, because you're right, like you had mentioned earlier, I'm 18 now. I'm a grown adult. This is all in
mm,
my hands now.
mm.
I can't cry about that stuff anymore. It's over and I'm grown now. It's all my responsibility. And that's not true.
No, you have to allow to feel the sadness for that boy and that little boy who's in the cot right there in the bassinet on that set. You have to allow to feel that sadness to be there. And that's the beauty of it. And as soon as you allow that to see that baby crying and you don't identify as that baby anymore, you're actually the adult. Because you know what, David, you made it. You're an adult. You actually did make it. You survived. And now I get to be the parent to those versions of myself that feel so unloved and unsafe. And then when you can witness it in that spiritual space and hold it there and hold it on your chest, hold that child with your chest. Feel safe in your body. Help your version, that version of you to feel safe at the same time. Co-regulate your nervous system with that aspect of yourself at the same time. Yeah, it's powerfully healing, but we have to find that space first, right? Before we go there, we can't just go straight to the goal. We've got to build that capacity up. We've got to build that nervous system. We've got to pull down a term called allostatic load. So allostatic load is when you've been too much in a limbic system state. So come out of that. We build capacity back in our nervous system to allow the fear and sadness and loneliness to be there. Because you know what? It's so relevant. It's so wanted. It's so valid. Absolutely. How could you not look at that little baby on that doorstep and feel so much love and care for that child? That's you, David. That's you. That's who you're feeling care and love for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've
Yeah.
learned to really spend time with my inner child, and
Mm.
I like it. I have a good
Yeah.
time with him, even if
Mm.
it's fine, even if we're mad.
Mm.
I really enjoy it. And I can see and feel the growth in myself, and I can see
Mm.
things are changing. And I've even learned ways to maybe something that would set me off or piss me off a little quicker. Now I have a bit of kindness and allow more grace
Mm.
for those things.
Mm.
So it's been a really cool experience. So to shift out of the inner child part though, a lot of the people that I do therapy with and that have been a part of the podcast,
Mm.
and definitely for myself, we in some way or another are survivors of
Mm.
one of the things that is common is I had to redefine what sex was after my rape
Mm.
because I went through a phase where sex became destructive to me.
Of course.
And
Mm.
there are some people who have no idea what a healthy sex life is because their
Mm.
sexual assault happened in their childhood. That was their introduction to sex.
Mm.
And so what I'm finding common is things can physically happen within our bodies where we can still have sex, but we find
Mm.
ourselves completely disconnected from it, not
Mm.
wanting it, not feeling safe with it. It
Mm.
becomes, I know that for my partner and I, it was part of our biggest problem is I almost didn't want to have sex because that was my way of showing him that I loved him by not having sex with
Mm.
him because I'm damaged. And so with your experience with everything that you're doing and the knowledge that you have, do you find this kind of therapy and treatment also maybe awakens a different sexual mind for you to where maybe that obstacle can be overcome?
Yes, it does because and like you say, sex can be interpreted and used for so many ways over so many different creations of it. Absolutely. And I think the way that it changes then and the way that it actually shifts out is because we actually get to validate that aspect that doesn't loved, that feels violated, that feels not wanted, that feel like if you've been raped, could feel like you were just cast aside and used as something, just not your emotions, your feelings, your version was not taken into account at all. And so as yeah, that's part of that experiencing. So this is the understanding of like, okay, so as much as it sucks and we don't want to experience it, there is going to be some, and we don't have to, and you never do. But maybe we just want to experience the sadness of that disconnection. Maybe that's okay. And this is the understanding as we move forward into relationships and connected into sexual relationships too, is it's okay to be vulnerable again. Your vulnerabilities are so welcome. You as a person are so welcome here. And you validate those vulnerabilities yourself by expressing them. And this is the understanding that I know is, hey, even though I feel really unsafe when I want to go in, when you want to go into this space and connect with me. And I understand from a cognitive space that yes, this is what actually two loving people do in a relationship is they come together and they share this experience. But my experience was really bad and I'm still not there yet. And that's okay. You don't have to compromise yourself in that moment. You get to sit and validate yourself and express it. And if the person in front of you gets somewhat dysregulated or somewhat doesn't agree with you, then that's not your problem. That's their problem. But you get to share your experience and you hold it and say, I'm so sorry. But you get to express yourself, it's through vulnerability. We don't just go, no, I don't want to do that. Let's not go there. I'm just, how I feel about that. That's just, talk about, you get to sit authentically with those emotions and go, this is how I feel right now. This is who I am. This is what's happening, rather than just deny it altogether, because you have the capacity to have now the hard conversations.
I love that. I can't wait for everyone to hear this episode. But there's certain just going through my mind. I'm like, I can't wait for them to hear it because we have those conversations of there has to be a way to get back in touch when parts of us that
Mm,
is holding us back romantically and sex. Not only are we depriving our partners, but we're also depriving ourselves.
mm,
One of the things that I learned about the David before my attack is that I had an issue with rejection. And I never
mm,
really realized that before. And then through therapy, I did EMDR and things like that. I learned that this man broke into my home, he assaulted me, wanted me dead. And that was the
mm,
biggest form of rejection. He didn't like
mm,
he didn't like my clothes. He didn't like my body. He didn't like having sex with me, which granted,
mm,
sex is about attraction. It's about control. Like identifies as a
mm,
great man married has a woman. It
mm,
wasn't a gay thing. But either way, like that's not the mindset that I had. It was just
mm,
everything about me was rejected to the point of he felt I did not deserve to be here and
mm,
tried to play God and take me out. And it was just the biggest
mm,
form of rejection. And
mm,
so to follow all the rejection and why I have an issue with rejection all the way back to the core of it was a beautiful disaster.
mm.
But it was mendable, it was fixable, it was a great experience. But during the time, I was like, everything's just so broken.
Everything's so broken from that point of view, from the point of view you had at that time. Yeah. And I think that rejection obviously goes right back to the baby on the doorstep. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at some point, there was a part of you that was fully identified in that space and then would suppress it as well. And so, if there is any kind of, and I'm sure there's many gifts that you've experienced that you've had from this experience. I think if the main one is really the rejection space. Yeah. It's working through that rejection space and understanding that's not actually who I am. That actually, I deserve to be here. I deserve to live. I deserve to be a contributing part. And I actually also can help many other people in this space now as well. Because all of a sudden somebody tried to remove me and look, I didn't go anywhere. Here I am. This is what, and I'm actually here so much more resilient, so much more embodied in who I am as a man now, as a gay man, as a loving gay man than I ever was before. And then that's why it's really difficult when you say this to people and you go, no, I am actually much more of a whole person now than I ever was. Because of this experience. This experience has brought me back together as a person. I was, like you said, I was fragmented, I was broken. And actually, through that brokenness and then that extreme event, it's brought you pretty much back to wholeness.
A really cool realization that I had is people want to say, oh, this just makes you stronger. And my response to that is I did not know how strong I already was. And what this experience taught me was how strong I already was. It's
Mm,
not a weak person and it took this to make me strong. Bitch, I was already strong. I just didn't I didn't know it and now I do.
yes,
And so
yes,
that was a
yes.
really cool experience. As we start bringing this to an end, I want to ask you, you were already in the medical field doing therapy with people,
Mm,
clients,
mm,
and then years into it, you broke away, you had your
mm,
moment, took some time for yourself, and then you got right back into it
mm,
and
mm,
hit it head on and doing some amazing things.
mm.
I would love to hear the different kind of connection you feel with your clients and guidance that you give to your clients now, because I think the best people to learn from are the people that have
Mm,
walked that
mm,
path. And so you were almost
mm,
denying yourself that path that you were on
mm,
for a while.
mm.
And so I wonder how much that affected your responses to previous clients to your responses now.
Oh no, it did deeply. I deeply affected. Obviously, previously, I was really into the point of helping people to identify problems. And then maybe we can start there and then let's have a conversation around that. And what does that look like? And I have a really high capacity to sit with people through traumatic experiences so I can let them tell me their whole trauma. It doesn't affect me at all. I'm really sensitive in my masculine. I can hold it really beautifully. After my breakdown and back to where I was, I realized that actually there's nothing ever wrong with us. We were always whole, regardless of whatever experience we thought that we had. Those experiences were given to us. They weren't something that we drawn to us. They were experiences that were given to us. In my point of view, in my world, I was brought into this world. I was never not perfect. I'm the son of God, the son of the universe. I'm the son of the stars. And if that's who I am and that's where I am, then there's nothing that you can either take away from me. And there's also nothing that needs to be added to me. I just need to have the understanding, and I need to feel that understanding. I need to understand that, hey, nothing wrong with you. You're perfect. There's nothing to heal either. You're already whole. You've just been given versions of not whole from people who didn't know any better themselves. And even then, it was from a loving space. Like from my father, I knew my father loved me deeply. He would say it often, and he would express it often. Yeah, but I didn't feel that way in the moment. And so now I look back at those times and go, yes, I was whole. I am whole. I am loved. There was nothing ever to fix. I was just given a version of myself from people who didn't know any better. And I took that version on. I took that belief system on. But that belief system no longer belongs to me. That's something that I lovingly hand back to them because they did the best job they could with the knowledge that they had at the time and with the childhood that they had. Obviously, my parents come from severe trauma as well, severe childhood trauma as well, and all of those things. And so, how could I ever blame anyone in my life who's just been generationally abused and had all those things done to them the whole life? I'm sure there's some experiences in your family the same. And so, once I took the blame and once I took back all of those versions of myself that I thought weren't whole, now my whole nervous system just went, "Whoa." Oh my God, there's nothing to fix. Who I am as the version today is absolutely perfect. It's like, how could it not be? So that's what I would say to the difference between the two and sitting there. Mm,
So powerful, so
mm,
amazing. I part of my reparenting that I've been trying to, or not been trying to do, I've been doing it, and honestly, I've been
mm,
nailing it. I've been kicking in his ass, but I felt myself using certain verbiage that your mind, your body hears you. And even listening back to older podcasts 3 years ago, I would say things like, I was robbed from this, or he stole this from me, talking about my guy
mm.
or the guy that attacked me. I don't want to say my guy is not claiming him by any way,
Yes.
but
Abs-
I learned that nothing was robbed, nothing was stolen. Certain things were
mm,
on hold,
mm,
but they're not gone. And I'm talking about
mm,
the parts of me that I like when I would say that my joy was robbed, or
mm,
my joy was stolen, or my laughter was stolen from me. It
mm,
wasn't. It was just put on hold for a minute. And so I found that even just changing the words robbed and stolen to being put on hold
mm,
temporarily changed
mm.
everything.
Absolutely. Belief systems and words are very powerful. Empires and dynasties that build on words and belief systems. It's so correct. And so if we can reframe those experiences, one of, yes, if it was a very traumatic, okay, I'm not going to reframe it completely to that's for something that I would have preferred to happen because I didn't prefer it to happen. But it's still something that brought me to this version of myself who I love today. And how could I not say, okay, I had to experience that, some version of that, or I had to go through something like that to bring myself, and maybe that's just a story I needed to play out for myself to come back to this version of who I adore and love today. And exactly right. So the reframing, the rewording, the re-understanding, the feeling, and this is the whole process. As much as we can cognitively understand, we can say, yes, I understand that this has to happen, but our bodies are going, no, I don't want to experience that. Once we integrate both, once we have the body and the mind in alignment, then we can fully experience that and fully be there with it. And then it just shifts everything,
Yeah.
completely goes. Mm.
And I even found how I would even victim blame myself.
Of
But
course.
yeah,
Yes.
it's like when I was talking about the whole rejection thing, it was like, maybe I am too gay. Maybe being gay is wrong. Maybe I shouldn't drink out of the same water bottle. Maybe I shouldn't wear bright colors.
Wow.
Maybe I should
Yeah.
with my voice. Or had I not done this, or had I
Mm.
not been here, it goes into the whole, if a woman like get sexually assaulted, people want to go to what were you wearing? It does not matter.
Mm,
And I did not even realize I was doing that to myself. And it makes me wonder how
mm,
many times a day we do victim blame, even on the smallest things without even realizing that we're doing it and our body hears it.
mm,
It's just a small little thing, but our body, it's almost like we're
mm,
yelling it to it. So
mm.
to break that pattern is so important and so powerful.
We have to change that because again, that victim blaming and that actually identifying in those spaces is actually a trauma response. And that trauma response is the nervous system response. So that's a version of keeping us safe from those experiences again, because we don't want to actually feel that anymore. And that means I can't reframe it to something that was, and look at those words, and I can't do that because it's no, these are the spaces. I'm going to victim blame. I'm going to be this because you know what? This is what I need to do to stay vigilant to the, ever that happening again. And once we come out of that, we just stop all of it just starts to slowly disappear and just fade off into the past. Mm.
Man, I love these conversations. Simon, thank you so much
Agreed, David.
for us today.
Mm.
Just incredible. And I've been reading your website. I'm going to share all the links.
Thank you, sir.
You're just such a safe place, man. And I
Mm.
appreciate that. I've been looking forward to this all day. I almost feel like I need to mail you a check for my therapy session because I feel like this is more therapy for me than a podcast episode, but I love it. I'll take it. But as we're closing out, will you tell everybody where we can find you, follow you, any platforms that you are active on?
Certainly. I'm active. I wouldn't say I'm very active on Instagram. I am there a little bit now. I'm being pushed to be a little bit more there. My Instagram handle is Siamon, Siamon .Emery. And there you can send me a message if you need to, or just follow me for any more information there. Also, my webpage, siamonemery.com, which is Siamon, for Mark, y.com. And there's a free introduction button that you can hit and book a free call with me if this is something that you'd to investigate a bit more. And I'd love to talk to you.
Remember, healing is a journey, not a destination.
You are not alone in this. It's okay to take your time, explore different perspectives, and find what resonates with you. Healing takes courage, and we believe in you.
Together, we can enjoy the ride.